She arrived for the divorce with a newborn strapped to her chest. The millionaire CEO sat there with his new fiancée, ready to sign his passed away, and was left in total shock. Hi everyone, and thanks for joining me today. Before we open the first page of this heartbreaking story, I have a small favor to ask. This story is about the words we can't take back and the families we almost destroy. If you believe that a mother's strength is the most powerful force on earth, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel right now. Join our growing family. And I always love to know who I'm telling stories to, so leave a comment down below telling me where you are watching from. Are you in London, Houston, Nairobi? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Now, let's begin. The glass doors of Cross and Partners reflected Camille Hayes's image back at her, distorted slightly by the afternoon sun. She saw a woman in a cream trench coat, dark denim, and sensible flats. She saw a leather portfolio gripped tightly in her left hand, containing the documents that would sever her ties to the Cross Empire forever. But mostly, she saw the baby carrier strapped to her chest. Inside, 6-month-old Julian slept soundly, his tiny fist curled against the fabric of Camille's blouse. He didn't know that his mother was about to walk into the office of the man who had told her to vanish. He didn't know that man, the most famous architect in New York City, was his father. Camille took a breath, steeling herself. She looked like she had survived a war, because she had. Her heels clicked against the polished marble floor of the executive level. She'd been here before, back when she was Damon Cross's wife, back when she thought their marriage was the foundation her life was built on. Now she was here for one reason only, to sign the papers and walk away clean. The receptionist, Sarah, looked up and froze. Her eyes went wide as she took in the baby carrier. "Mrs. Cross, Miss Hayes, is he in?" Camille's voice was calm, controlled, a fortress. "Yes, but he's in a meeting. Miss Hayes, you can't simply—" "Perfect." Camille walked past the desk. Julian shifted slightly, but didn't wake. She pushed open the heavy double doors to the CEO's office without knocking. The scene that greeted her was pathetic in its perfection. Damon Cross sat behind his massive glass desk. He looked every inch the millionaire genius. Tailored navy suit, sharp jawline, dark hair perfectly styled. He looked exactly like the man she'd married, the man she'd loved, the man who had destroyed her. Next to him, perched on the edge of his desk, was a woman with platinum blonde hair and a diamond on her finger, Sienna, the daughter of a real estate tycoon. She'd seen the engagement announcement in the New York Times 3 weeks ago. They both turned when the doors opened. Sienna's perfect smile froze. Damon's face went blank, then white. "Camille," his voice cracked on her name. She walked into the room like she owned it. She didn't look at Sienna. She looked at Damon, and her gaze was absolute ice. "I'm here to sign the divorce papers," she said. She set the leather folder on his desk. "I assume you still have them." Damon stood slowly. He seemed taller than she remembered. His eyes moved from Camille's face down to the carrier on her chest. He stared, his mouth opening slightly, but no sound came out. Sienna slid off the desk, confusion tightening her features. "Damon, who is this?" Camille answered before he could. "I'm his wife." She adjusted the carrier strap, and Julian made a soft sigh, drawing their attention. "Well, soon-to-be ex-wife," Camille corrected. "And this is Julian." Damon took a step forward, stumbling slightly. His eyes were locked on the baby. The color drained from his face completely. "That's—" Damon pointed a shaking finger. "Is that your son?" Camille said it without emotion, just a cold, hard fact. "Congratulations, Damon. You're a father." The silence in the room was suffocating. Sienna looked between them, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God, Damon, you have a child?" But Damon wasn't looking at Sienna. He was staring at Julian with the expression of a man watching his entire world collapse. The baby stirred, his little face scrunching up, and the resemblance was undeniable. Julian had Damon's nose, his mouth, his dark hair. He was a miniature copy of the man standing behind the desk. "You were pregnant," Damon whispered. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Camille's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Was I pregnant? Yes, Damon, I was pregnant." She reached into the carrier and gently lifted Julian out. The baby was tiny, his head still needing support, curled instinctively against her warmth. "I came home to tell you," Camille said steadily, her voice a fortress. "I had the test in my purse wrapped in a blue ribbon. I was so excited I could barely breathe. I walked into our penthouse, ready to start our family." Damon flinched, looking down at his desk. "And you were drunk." "Camille, don't," Damon rasped. "No, let's remember it," Camille pressed on. "I walked in and you were sitting on the couch with a bottle of scotch. It was the anniversary of the day your father walked out on you, wasn't it? You were wallowing in it, becoming him." Damon didn't answer. His knuckles were white against the glass desk. "I said, Damon, I have something to tell you, something wonderful. And do you remember what you said?" "I don't," Damon whispered. "I was drunk. I blacked out." "You said, I don't want to hear it." Camille's eyes didn't leave his face. Sienna backed into the corner, an intruder in a tragedy. "I tried to tell you anyway. I tried to hold your hand, and you stood up and you looked at me like garbage. You said you were suffocating me. You said you were worthless." The word hung in the air. Worthless. "You said you never wanted to see my face again. You told me to get out. You screamed it." The memory crashed over her. The penthouse that felt like a prison. Damon's eyes full of a rage that belonged to his father. "Get out," he had roared. "Just get the hell out of my life, Camille. You bring nothing to this table. You are worthless." She had stood there frozen, the positive pregnancy test burning in her purse. She realized in that moment that bringing a child into that room would be a mistake. So she had left. She walked out, sat in a parking lot cramping from stress, terrified she was losing the baby. She drove to an emergency clinic at midnight, alone, while her husband passed out on the floor. "I said that?" Damon whispered now, horror filling his voice. "I told you to get out?" "Yes," Camille said. She patted Julian's back. "So I got out. I went through the pregnancy alone. I went to every doctor's appointment alone. I gave birth alone. I have been raising him alone for 6 months." "Damon," Sienna's voice was barely audible, "you told a pregnant woman to leave?" Damon couldn't look at his fiancée. His eyes were fixed on the son he had never known existed. "I didn't know," Damon said, his voice breaking. "God, Camille, if I had known." "You didn't know because you didn't want to know," Camille cut him off. "You pushed me away. You chose the whiskey. You chose your father's ghost over your actual wife." She reached for the leather folder and flipped it open. She pulled a pen from her purse and signed her name with swift, decisive strokes. Camille Hayes. "I'm done," she said simply. "Sign the papers, Damon. I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you. Just sign them, and you will never have to see my worthless face again." Damon's face crumpled. "Camille, wait, please." She slid the papers across the desk. She carefully placed Julian back into the carrier. "There is no waiting. There is no explaining. You made your choice that night. I made mine." Damon moved around the desk, reaching for her. "I didn't know. How can you punish me for something I didn't know?" "I'm not punishing you," Camille said, stepping back. "I'm protecting him. Why would I let a man who calls his wife worthless near my son?" "He's my son too," Damon shouted. "Now he's your son?" Camille asked, her voice lethal. "Where was that passion when you told me to leave? Where was that concern when you didn't come looking for me? You just replaced me." She glanced at Sienna. "Sign the papers, Damon. Then we're done." "I can't," Damon said, tears streaming down his face. "I have a son. You have nothing. You are walking out of here with nothing." "I have everything," Camille said, putting her hand over Julian's back. I have the one thing you threw away. I have a family." She turned and walked toward the door. "Camille," Damon ran after her. "Wait, can I see him?" She reached the door and turned one last time. He looked broken. "Good," she said softly. "Feel that. That's what I felt for 9 months." She walked out. She left him standing in the doorway of his glass castle, his empire meaningless around him. Behind her, Sienna stared at the engagement ring on her finger, realizing she was wearing a lie. And Damon Cross stood frozen, watching the elevator doors close on the woman he had driven away and the son he had never met. As the elevator descended, Damon fell to his knees in the middle of his office. He wasn't thinking about the divorce or Sienna. He was thinking about the tiny blue eyes he had just seen, eyes that looked exactly like his. And he realized with a terrifying clarity that he would burn his entire company to the ground if it meant he could hold that boy just once. But how do you find someone who doesn't want to be found? Damon Cross wiped the tears from his face and stood up. He didn't know how, but he knew one thing. The divorce wasn't happening. Not today, not ever. Damon Cross's office was silent. It was the hollow, ringing silence of a bomb site. The unsigned divorce papers lay on the glass desk. Damon stood in the center of the room, staring at the empty doorway. Damon. He turned slowly. He had forgotten Sienna was there. She was standing by the window, her arms wrapped around herself. Her face was pale. "Sienna," Damon croaked. "Don't," she interrupted. "Don't insult me by trying to explain." She walked over to the desk. "You told me she was crazy. You told me the marriage ended because you grew apart. You told me you were the victim." "I thought I was," Damon whispered. "I swear to you, Sienna, I didn't remember." "That makes it worse," she said, her voice trembling. "It means you were so far gone that you threw a pregnant woman out of your house and didn't even register it." She slid the massive diamond engagement ring off her finger. It made a sharp clack as she set it on the glass desk. "I can't be here," she said. "I can't marry a man who did that, and I certainly can't marry a man who is clearly still in love with his wife." Damon looked at her. "I'm not." "Stop it," Sienna snapped. "I saw your face when you looked at that baby. I saw your face when she walked out. I was a placeholder, Damon. I was just someone to fill the empty space in your penthouse so you didn't have to hear the echoes." She picked up her purse and walked to the door. "Go find her," Sienna said. "Not for you, for that little boy. He deserves better than the man I saw today." The door clicked shut. Damon was alone. He couldn't stay at the office. He told his assistant to cancel everything and drove. He didn't know where he was going at first, weaving through Manhattan traffic with reckless aggression. Eventually, the car seemed to drive itself home. He pulled into the garage of the Tribeca penthouse. The elevator ride was a blur. When the doors opened, the smell hit him. Sandalwood, and underneath it all, a faint trace of vanilla. Camille's perfume. He walked into the living room. It was cold. It was perfect. It was a tomb. Damon walked to the white leather sofa. This was where it happened. The memory, which had been a black hole for 6 months, suddenly sparked to life. Flashback. The rain lashing against the windows, the empty bottle of scotch, the date, November 12th, the anniversary of his father leaving. He remembered the rage. Then the door opening, Camille walking in, glowing. "Damon, I have something to tell you." He remembered the sound of her happiness. It had grated on him. How dared she bring light into his darkness? "I don't want to hear it." He heard his own voice echoing. He saw himself standing up, swaying. "You're suffocating me. You're worthless. Get out." Damon fell to his knees on the rug. He put his head in his hands and let out a sound that wasn't quite a scream. It was the sound of a soul breaking. "I became him," he whispered. "I became my father."
He had spent his entire life trying to be the opposite of the man who abandoned him. He had built an empire to prove he was strong, and in one night, in one drunken rage, he had done exactly what his father had done. He had abandoned his family. "I have to find them," he said, scrambling to his feet. He dialed Camille's number. Blocked. He dialed her old friend, Mara. Voicemail. Desperation clawed at his throat. He called his private investigator. "I need an address," Damon said, his voice shaking. "Camille Hayes. I don't care what it costs. Find her, now." It took 4 hours. 4 hours of pacing the penthouse, staring at the empty Scotch bottle, tempted to drink it, but knowing if he took one sip, he would never stop. When the text came, it was just an address. 412 Sterling Place, Brooklyn, apartment 3B. Damon didn't hesitate. He ran. The building was a modest brownstone in Brooklyn, older, with ivy crawling up the brick facade. It was raining again, a cold New York drizzle that soaked through Damon's suit as he stood on the sidewalk. The lights were on in the third-floor window. He saw a shadow move, a silhouette he knew better than his own. She was rocking back and forth, putting our son to sleep. He walked up the steps and pressed the buzzer. Silence. He pressed it again. "Camille, it's me. Please." The intercom crackled. "Go away, Damon." Her voice was tinny, but it cut him to the bone. "I'm not leaving," he said. I need to see him. I need to see you. Please, Camille. I didn't know." "You knew enough to break me," she replied. "You knew enough to throw me away." "I was wrong. I was sick. I'm sorry. I will spend the rest of my life saying I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't change the past, Damon. Sorry doesn't pay for the nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering why I wasn't enough for you." "Camille, please, open the door. Let me explain." "There is nothing to explain. You have a fiancé. Go home." "She's gone," Damon shouted. "Sienna is gone. There is no one but you. There has only ever been you." There was a long silence. For a second, Damon thought she might buzz him in. Then the intercom clicked off. The light in the third-floor window went dark. Damon stood there, the rain dripping off his nose. He realized the magnitude of the wall she had built. It was made of pain, and he was the architect who designed it. He tried the door handle, locked. He remembered what Sienna had said. "He deserves better than the man I saw today." The man he needed to be had to learn patience. So Damon Cross did the only thing he could do. He sat down. He sat on the wet concrete steps of the brownstone. He folded his arms over his knees and stared at the street. He wasn't going to leave. If she looked out in the morning, he would be there. He was going to sit in the rain and feel every drop, a penance for the storm he had sent her into 8 months ago.
The rain had turned into a steady, freezing downpour. It was 2:15 a.m. Damon Cross was still sitting on the stoop. His tailored suit was ruined. His muscles were locked in a spasm of cold. He hadn't moved in 6 hours. He wondered if freezing to death right here would be enough to balance the scales. Probably not, he thought. You can't freeze away a memory like that. Inside apartment 3B, Camille Hayes woke with a start. It was a mother's instinct, a sudden sharp pull in her chest. She sat up. Julian was whimpering. It was a high, thin sound of distress. She flew to the crib. "Julian?" She touched his cheek and pulled her hand back as if she'd been burned. He was radiating heat. His little chest heaved with shallow breaths. "Oh, God," Camille whispered. She pressed the thermometer to her forehead. It beeped angrily. 104.2 degrees. Panic washed over her. For a 6-month-old, a fever that high was dangerous. Okay, we're going," she said, her voice shaking. She didn't bother changing out of her pajamas. She grabbed her coat, boots, and wrapped Julian in a thick blanket. He was lethargic, too weak to cry loudly. Camille grabbed the diaper bag and ran. She burst out the heavy front door and onto the stoop, fumbling for her phone to call an Uber. Camille? A dark figure rose from the concrete steps like a gargoyle. Camille screamed, jumping back. Who was Damon? Damon stepped into the light. He looked like a drowned rat. He looked at the bundle in her arms, then at her terrified face. "What's wrong?" Damon asked, his voice rough. "Is he okay?" "He's burning up," Camille cried. "His fever is 104. I need to get him to the ER." She looked down at her phone. Uber, 12 minutes away. 12 minutes is too long, she sobbed. "My car is right there," Damon said, pointing to the silver Aston Martin. "Get in." "I can't." "Camille, get in the car," Damon roared, snapping into action. "I can get us to New York Presbyterian in 6 minutes. Do you want to argue with me, or do you want to save our son?" "Our son." Camille looked at Julian's flushed face. She looked at the man she hated, offering her the only lifeline she had. "Drive," she said. The drive was a blur. Damon drove with terrified precision, weaving through the slick streets. His knuckles were white on the wheel. He didn't look at her. Camille rocked Julian. "It's okay, baby. Stay with me." "Talk to him," Damon commanded. "Keep him awake." "I'm trying," Camille snapped, tears streaming. "He's so hot, Damon." "He's going to be fine," Damon said. "It was an order to the universe. He's a cross. We don't go down easy." He pulled up to the ER, throwing the car into park and running around to open her door. He held the umbrella over them as they ran inside. The triage nurses rushed them back immediately. They stripped Julian down, hooked him up to monitors, and started an IV. Camille stood by the bed, holding Julian's hand, singing softly. Damon stood in the corner. He was shivering violently, his wet clothes creating a puddle. He looked completely out of place, a billionaire in a ruined suit, watching helplessly. "It's likely a viral spike," the doctor said finally. "The fever is already coming down, 101.5 now. We want to keep him for observation, but he's going to be fine." Camille let out a breath and her knees buckled. Damon was there instantly, sliding a chair underneath her right before she hit the floor. "Sit," he said gently. Camille collapsed. "Thank God." The room went quiet, save for the rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the heart monitor. Camille looked up. Damon was still standing in the corner, looking exhausted. "You can go," Camille said. "He's stable. You did your part." "I'm not leaving," Damon said. "Damon, you're freezing. You don't belong here." "He's my son," Damon said quietly. "I missed his birth. I missed his first 6 months. I'm not missing this." "You don't get to play hero just because you drove fast," Camille whispered. "You don't get to earn points for this." "I'm not trying to earn points." Damon walked to the other side of the crib, looking down at the sleeping baby. I'm terrified, Camille. When I saw him like that, I thought I was going to die." Camille saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't the CEO right now. He was just a father. "I've been doing this alone for 6 months, Camille said, trembling. "Every fever, every scare, I did it alone because you told me I was worthless." Damon flinched. "I know, and I will hate myself for that until the day I die. But tonight you didn't have to do it alone, and I'm staying." He pulled a plastic chair over and sat. "I won't talk, I won't touch him. I'll just watch the monitor. You sleep." "I can't sleep. You're shaking. Close your eyes. If that number goes above 100, I will wake you. I swear on my life." Camille looked at the monitor. 99.8. She looked at Damon. He was watching the screen with intense vigilance. Her body betrayed her. She was asleep in 10 seconds. Damon watched her sleep. She looked like a warrior who would finally put down her shield. Then he looked at Julian. He reached out a finger, hovering it over the baby's hand. He didn't dare touch him. He felt like he hadn't earned the right. "I made this," he thought, "and I almost snuffed it out." He sat there for an hour. He didn't move. He guarded his family. Camille woke up with a start. The sunlight was streaming in. She checked her watch. 7 a.m. "You liar," she rasped. "You said 20 minutes." Damon was still sitting there, stubbled and wrinkled. "He didn't spike. His temperature is normal. I didn't want to wake you." Camille looked at the crib. Julian was awake, chewing on his fist, staring at Damon with fascination. "He's okay," Camille breathed.
She picked Julian up, burying her nose in his neck. Damon stood up stiffly. The doctor came by. Discharge papers are signed. You're free to go. Okay, Camille said. Damon drove her home, navigating the morning traffic. When they pulled up to 412 Sterling Place, the rain had stopped. I'm going to go get a hotel, Damon said, not looking at her. I'm going to shower, and then I'm going to come back and sit on that stoop again. Camille looked at him. She saw the man who sat in a plastic chair for 4 hours so she could sleep. It didn't fix the past, but it was something. Don't sit on the stoop, Camille said quietly. Damon looked at her, hope flaring. Can I come up? No, Camille said sharply. You are not coming into my apartment. You are not coming into his life like a wrecking ball. The hope faded. Okay, I understand. But, Camille continued, Sunday, 2 p.m., you can come over for 1 hour, supervised. Damon felt like he had just won the lottery. Sunday, 2 p.m. If you are 1 minute late, Damon, if you check your phone once, I won't, he promised. I'll be perfect. Don't be perfect, Camille said, getting out. Just be his father. Damon watched her go. He leaned his head back against the headrest and let out a long breath. The architect had a new project, and this time he wasn't going to cut a single corner.
Sunday arrived. At exactly 1:55 p.m., Damon Cross stood on the sidewalk of Sterling Place. He wasn't wearing his usual suit. He wore jeans and a gray sweater. He looked like a man trying to figure out who he was. He waited until the second hand swept past the 12 to mark exactly 2 p.m., then rang the buzzer. Come in, Camille's voice said. He walked up the stairs, heart hammering. Camille was standing in the living room, arms crossed. Shoes off, wash your hands, kitchen sink. Damon obeyed. When he returned, Camille pointed to a wooden rocking chair. That's your chair. You sit there. I sit here on the sofa. If he cries, I take him back. If you check your phone, the visit is over. Clear? Crystal. He sat. Camille picked up Julian and passed him over like a fragile package containing a bomb. Support his head. Damon took his son. The weight of the baby settled into his arms. Julian smelled like milk and lavender. He looked up at Damon with wide, curious blue eyes. He didn't cry. He grabbed Damon's sweater. Hi, Damon whispered, his voice thick. Hi, Julian. Camille sat on the sofa, watching him like a hawk. She was waiting for the mistake. But Damon didn't try to control the situation. He just held him. For 1 hour, the room was silent except for Julian's coos. At 3 p.m. sharp, Camille stood up. Time's up. Damon handed Julian back immediately. Thank you. See you next Sunday? Next Sunday, 2 p.m. This became the ritual. For 6 weeks, Damon lived in 2 realities. Monday through Saturday, he ran a billion-dollar firm. But on Sundays, he was just a man in a gray sweater learning that his son's laugh was the only sound that mattered. He was perfect. He was punctual. And Camille hated it. She wanted him to fail. She wanted him to be the monster, because monsters are easy to leave. But this quiet man building block towers was dangerous. He was making her remember why she loved him. Then came the test. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Damon was in his office looking at models for the Tokyo Skyline Tower. It was the project of a lifetime, a $50 million contract. His partner, Kenji, burst in. They're ready to sign. Yamamoto wants to do the final review this weekend. We fly out Friday. Damon nodded. Okay. That's the problem, Kenji grimaced. Yamamoto consults his astrologer. He will only sign on Sunday, October 27th at sunset. That's 4 p.m. Tokyo time. Damon froze. He did the math. If he was in Tokyo on Sunday, he wouldn't be in Brooklyn. We can't do Sunday, Damon said. Push him to Monday. But Damon, if we miss the window, they walk. We have to be there Sunday. Damon looked at the model of the tower. It was the legacy he had promised his father he would surpass. Then he looked at the calendar on his phone. Sunday,
2 p.m. Julian. He had promised Camille. "I can't go," Damon said quietly. Kenji's smile dropped. "What? This is a $50 million deal, Damon. Yamamoto expects the CEO. If you aren't there, we lose the contract." "Then we lose the contract," Damon said. "For what? What is more important than the Tokyo Tower?" "A 1-hour appointment in Brooklyn." "You're throwing away $50 million for a date?" "It's not a date," Damon said, his voice hardening. "It's my son. I promised his mother I would be there every Sunday. If I miss one, I lose them. I'm not losing them again. Cancel the jet." Sunday, 1:55 p.m. Camille Hayes stood in her kitchen staring at her phone. She knew about the Tokyo deal. It was all over the news. She felt a heavy, dull ache. She expected this. Money would call and Damon would answer. "See, Julian," she whispered, "Daddy is a busy man." She picked up her phone to text him, "I assume you're in Japan. Don't bother coming next week." The buzzer rang. Camille jumped. She pressed the button. "Hello?" "It's 2 p.m., Damon's voice said. "Can I come up?" Camille unlocked with a shaking finger. When she opened the door, Damon was standing there. He looked tired, but he was there. He washed his hands and walked into the living room. "I thought you were in Japan. I saw the news." Damon sat in the rocking chair. "I sent Kenji." "But the news said they demanded the CEO. You canceled a $50 million contract for a 1-hour visit?" Damon looked up at her, honest and intense. "Camille, I spent 10 years chasing contracts. I built towers that touch the clouds, and none of it made me happy. The only time I feel like a real person is when I'm holding him." He reached out his hands toward Julian. "I promised you I would show up. I don't break promises to you anymore, even if it costs me $50 million. Camille stood there, frozen. Narcissists don't torch their careers to hold a baby. For the first time, the mortar in her wall began to crack. She walked over and settled the baby into Damon's arms. Her hand brushed against his shoulder. He flinched at the contact, looking up with desperate hope. "You're an idiot," Camille whispered, thick with emotion. "Your partners are going to kill you." "Let them," Damon said, burying his face in Julian's neck. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Camille went back to the sofa. She opened her book, but she didn't read. She watched him. She watched the man who had destroyed her life, now rebuilding it, sacrifice by sacrifice. "He likes the blocks," Camille said suddenly. "If you stack them, he likes to knock them down." Damon smiled, a real smile. "An architect who likes demolition, that's my boy." Camille smiled back. It was small, but it was there. When 3 p.m. came, Damon stood to leave. "Damon," Camille said at the door, "next week maybe you could come a little earlier? Bring lunch? Julian likes avocado toast." Damon looked like she had offered him the moon. "I make excellent avocado toast. 1 p.m.? 1 p.m., Camille agreed. He walked down the stairs, heart soaring. He had lost the Tokyo deal, but he had got an extra hour. It was the most profitable deal of his life.
Time moved differently now. Weeks bled into months. Julian was crawling, a chaotic force of nature, and Damon was there for it. He had survived the fallout of Tokyo, fighting a proxy war to keep his CEO position from a makeshift office in Brooklyn. He didn't care. He was 5 minutes away from his son. But proximity didn't mean forgiveness. Camille had agreed to couples therapy, strictly for co-parenting. "I feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop," Camille admitted in a session. "He's being perfect, but I remember the other Damon, the one who threw a glass. I'm terrified that one day the monster is going to come back." Damon didn't defend himself. "I can't erase him, Camille, but I'm keeping him in a cage." The breakthrough didn't happen in therapy. It happened on a rainy Thursday evening. Damon was over for a midweek dinner. He was on the floor building a tower of blocks. Ba-ba-ba, Julian babbled, smacking the blocks. Julian looked at Damon. He reached out with sticky hands, grabbing Damon's cheeks. He stared into Damon's blue eyes and grinned. "Da-da," Julian said. The room went silent. Camille froze in the kitchen doorway. "Da-da," Julian said again, louder. Damon stopped breathing. The joy that washed over his face lit up the gloomy apartment. Tears filled his eyes. "Yes," Damon whispered. "Yes, buddy, I'm Dada. I'm right here." He pulled Julian into his chest, sobbing quietly. It was the validation of his existence. But in the doorway, Camille felt something break. It wasn't joy, it was a sharp pang of jealousy. She turned and walked back into the kitchen, gripping the counter. She had done everything, carried him, birthed him, nursed him, but Julian looked at the man who had abandoned them and loved him instantly. "Camille?" Damon was standing in the doorway, holding Julian. "Did you hear him? He said it." Camille turned. "I heard him," she said coldly. Damon's smile faltered. He saw the exhaustion and resentment on her face. He put Julian in his high chair and turned back to her. "You hate it," Damon said quietly. "You hate that he loves me." "I don't hate that he loves you," Camille said, shaking. "I hate that it's so easy for him. I hate that he doesn't know what you did. I hate that I'm the only one in this house who remembers the sound of your voice telling me to get out." She wiped a tear angrily. "He looks at you and sees a hero. I look at you and I still see the man who destroyed me. I don't know how to live in both worlds." Damon stood there. He realized that bringing avocado toast wasn't enough. The past had to be faced. "Come here," Damon said. He walked into the living room and pointed to the beige sofa. "Sit down." Camille sat. It was the same spot she used to sit in their old penthouse. Damon stood in front of her. He unbuttoned his jacket, loosened his tie, and ran a hand through his hair, trying to look like the wreck he was that night. "I need you to look at me," Damon said, "and I need to say it." "Say what?" The words I said that night, the words that haunt you." "No, Damon, no." "Yes," he insisted, "until I own it, until I say it while looking you in the eye, sober, you will never believe that I'm not that man anymore." He stepped closer. He towered over her. He forced himself to summon the memory of his father, the rage, the failure. "Camille," he said, his voice dropping to a rough timbre. Camille trembled. "You are suffocating me," Damon said. The words tasted like ash. "You bring nothing to this table. You are worthless." He said the word, the weapon. "Get out," Damon choked out, tears spilling over his cheeks. "Get out of my life." Silence. Camille looked at him, but this time she didn't see a drunk monster. She saw a man standing in the wreckage, weeping. She saw a man brave enough to hold the knife he had stabbed her with. Damon fell to his knees. He put his head in her lap and sobbed. "I am so sorry. I was wrong. You were everything. I was the worthless one. I was the coward." Camille looked down. She felt his tears soaking through her jeans. For 6 months she had waited for him to minimize it, but by reenacting it, he had taken the power out of the memory. She reached out a trembling hand and placed it on his head. "You were a coward," she whispered. "I know," Damon sobbed. "And you broke us." "I know. But," Camille took a deep breath, looking at Julian happily eating a cracker, "but you're here now, and you're sober, and you're trying." She lifted Damon's head. His eyes were raw. "I can't forget it, Damon," Camille said. "I don't expect you to. But maybe," she wiped a tear from his cheek, "maybe we can build something new on top of the ruins. Not a restoration, a new construction." Damon nodded. "I'm an architect. I'm good at building things." "Then build this," she said. "Prove to me that Dada isn't just a word. Prove to me it's a promise." "I will. Every day." Camille stood up. She felt lighter. "It's Tuesday, dinner night." "I can order something," Damon said quickly. "No," Camille said. She pulled a box of pasta from the pantry. "Stay."
Julian needs to eat, and I don't want to eat alone. Damon smiled, a fragile, watery, genuine smile. He took the pasta. I'll boil the water. You get the baby. Camille picked up Julian, who squealed "Dada" and pointed at Damon. Camille kissed his cheek. Yeah, baby, she whispered, looking at Damon's back as he rolled up his sleeves to cook a $3 meal for the family he would have died for. She sat at the table. The rain tapped gently against the window. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. The trust was still fragile, but as Damon turned to ask her how she liked her pasta, Camille realized that for the first time in a year, she wasn't looking for the exit. She was home.